16,000 new IRS agents whose only job will be policing the health care law and the 49 financial regulations and rules over which it will have direct control. But has the IRS already jumped the gun? The Daily Caller, among others, now reporting lawsuits already being filed over the agency improperly seizing medical records of 10 million Americans. Celia, that's a lot of Americans.
It's devastating, but I'm not surprised because this past week the IRS has made it very obvious that they're operating under an underlying political agenda, and they're willing to violate the Constitution to do so. First with the First Amendment and targeting conservative and religious groups, now with the Fourth Amendment with unlawfully seizing the medical records of these innocent Americans.
Well, we don't know their political, to be fair, we don't know their political persuasion or whether this was, and maybe here you can help me, Alexander, whether this was just part of what their eventual job will be, and they're sort of jumping the gun. What do you make of it?
This was clearly a mistake. 15 agents went in to seize documents in a related tax lawsuit and took medical record boxes. These 15 agents were clearly not the best and the brightest, should not
doesn't that give you pause, Alexandra?
IRS.
Doesn't that give you pause when they're going to have much more control? This is just a preview to coming attractions with the backdrop of targeting these conservative groups. Wouldn't it give you pause?
I disagree, Neil. I think that these were some low-level bureaucrats who made a terrible mistake.
They've got millions of records,
very nonchalant
Alexander. They've got
about
millions
the whole
of
thing.
records.
Always low level.
Exactly, it's always low level.
What really concerns me. What really concerns me here is more about the broad sweeping lawsuit and what implications that has. But look, there are new heads in charge of the IRS. Several of them served under George Bush as well as under the Obama administration, and I'm sure that they're going to get their house in order.
Well, I guess I'm just saying go slow until you do, Phil. And I'm not casting political aspersions because she's right. A lot of these are, former Bush appointees and all. So I'm not saying, I don't care whose fault it is, just that the IRS obviously isn't up to speed when it's making a mistake of this magnitude, because forget about targeting conservative groups. If you're prematurely jumping on millions of folks' tax records when you shouldn't be, and I don't care what their political persuasion is, you shouldn't be doing it, and they're already doing it, and this is ahead of them being granted far more sweeping, substantial powers.
Yeah, the fundamental problem here is that there's far too much government power, and in particular far too much bureaucratic power being handed over to these agencies like the IRS. And there are always going to be dozens or hundreds of agents or low-level bureaucrats or whatever you want to call them who are going to act badly and do bad things. And instead of making excuses after the fact or litigating it, we should limit government power on the front end. And that's why I think we've got to do something about this health care law before they have this huge interagency database where they're going to have regular access to this, and any rogue agent's going to be able to go in and get all kinds of health information and other information because it's going to be stored in a government database that they have access to. And so the potential for these types of problems becomes much greater when you have more government power. And I think that's why today's health care repeal vote was so important, and why this is going to continue to be a major debate kind of as this thing gets rolled out going into the fall with open enrollment coming.
Yeah, but I tell you, see, my own view on the repeal thing is it doesn't go further than the House. It's done. We're stuck with this turkey. Just my own disparaging personal view of it.
Neil, I think
I agree.
Well, no, I know, guys, but here's what I want to get at, is that do these issues that have popped up regarding the IRS prompt the healthcare rollout to slow down dramatically?
I think that Democrats and Republicans both need to be outraged about this and demand a full investigation into the IRS before they put their hands into the Obamacare implementation come 2014. Because how can we trust the IRS right now when they are breaking the law left and right? We can't, and there needs to be a full-fledged investigation into the IRS before they are granted even more power into our lives and into our medical business.
You know, Alexander, I heard what you were saying at the outset, and I agree with you in this respect that, you have some rogue agents involved here that just did something nutty, stupid, or even just inept. But I have a theory when you have a contract, I don't know if you have a contract at your house, that 10% of that is padded or waste or whatever estimate they're giving you. It's just thievery. Not all contractors, mind you, but actually all contractors. So I'm beginning to wonder the huge sums we're talking about for the IRS, just the small amount of wiggle room for mistake, abuse, stupidity. is stupendous here, worrisome here. And that's why I say go slow here. What do you say?
Well, look, again, I think that we're talking about two isolated incidents. You know, when the IRS under George Bush was investigating
These are two big
PETA and
isolated
NAACP,
incidents,
no one called for hearings.
These are two big isolated incidents.
Do you fire the top guy for an isolated
again,
incident?
we're talking about select agents in one office in Cincinnati who investigated conservative groups, and 15 agents who, in a moment of incompetence, surely went in and
but we don't know
took
any of
medical
that. We
records
don't know
that
whether
they
it's
should not
just
have
rogue
had access
agents.
to.
We
Which
don't
is why
know.
there
We
needs
just
to be
don't
an
know.
investigation. There needs to be an
I don't
investigation so we
disagree,
can find
Celia,
these answers
but look,
out.
I think
and Neil, I would point out that we're already
what conservatives
seeing
are doing is using this as an excuse to try to
I'm just using
we're already seeing the significant abuse of power in the rollout of the health care
But Phil, here's
law.
what I want. If you have problems, you examine the problems before you give any more responsibility to the entity creating the problems.
You
That's
bet.
all I'm saying.
Yeah, and even with respect to the rollout of the health care law, we've got a highly questionable rule forcing employer penalties to apply in states that lawfully opted out.
Right.
That's being litigated right now, and that came from the same brain trust that brought us these politically motivated
We'll see.
investigations.
We'll see, guys.
So I think
It is
we're
a
already
mess.
seeing abuse.
Let's hope it's limited, but boy, I'm not encouraged by what I've seen. But I do appreciate all of you joining me.